Annie and the Tree Huggers by Jeannie Atkins, illustrated by Vincentius J. Pinto. Annie and the Tree Huggers is a real story of the Chipko movement, a forest conservation movement in India. Annie set down the basket of brown nuts she had been gathering and sat beneath her favorite tree. Every day, at least once, she leaned gratefully against its thick, rough trunk. Here she had daydreams too large to fit in her family's crowded hut where crying babies, her grandfather's complaints, and her sister's gossip drowned out the sounds of her own thinking. Annie crushed a red berry to make a red spot on her forehead like her mother's. She was weaving grass around her ankle like the silver bracelets married women wore when she heard rumbling and roaring. The sound was as angry as a tiger's growl. It was louder than the thunder that seemed like the stormy voice of the snow-capped mountains. Annie glanced at the Himalayas, but the noise was not coming from that snowy home of the spirits. As the grinding and gnashing grew louder, Annie sprang up. She knocked over her basket of nuts as she ran toward home. Her mother was not in their hut or in the yard. Her father and other men were in a distant field cutting stalks of rice. Annie ran to the river and found her mother filling a jug with water. "Mother, can you hear the noise?" Annie cried. Her mother put down the jug and listened. A woman beside her stopped whisking the sari she was washing through the water. Several women, some with babies bouncing on their backs, rushed towards them. Annie's mother looked past the smoke that curled between the tree trunks. "It's a truck," she told Annie. "A gigantic and swift cart." The other women had reached them. "It is as we heard from the forest runners," Kalavati said. Everyone turned to listen respectfully since Kalavati was the oldest person in the village. "The men from the city have come to take the woods." Annie's mother frowned. "But the forest has always been here. Our people have always been here." "The men from the city will say that we don't own it. We don't have papers," Kalavati said. "That's what they told them in the other village." The rumbling had stopped. Annie lifted the hem of her sari and ran towards the place that had just turned silent. She sped past the rice field, where the men carried sheaves of rice on their backs like golden capes. Annie's mother and the other women dropped their baskets and pots and hurried behind her. The silver bracelets on their wrists and ankles jangled. They stopped when they saw the truck. Several men swung axes. One held a tool with jagged and sharp steel teeth. "Namaste." Annie and the women put their hands together prayer-like and bowed their heads. The men continued to swing their silver axes at the bottoms of small trees. The metal first broke the bark. The gashes grew wider. One man pushed a broken tree. It thudded to the ground. Annie's mother covered her mouth. "Stop!" Kalavati cried. A man pulled the chain of a saw. The grinding noise was shrill, but Kalavati spoke loudly. "The trees give us their fruit and berries. Their wood provides our houses and our plows and hoes. The roots keep the land from sliding when the heavy winds and rain come off the mountains." The men continued to swing axes. The swaying and buckling branches let Ani see the wind, and the wind let her see spirits. A man with an axe seemed only to touch a tree and it crashed down. Kalavati ran towards this man. "Kalavati, stop!" the woman called. Kalavati grabbed for the man's axe. The man pushed Kalavati and she tumbled. "Get out of the way!" yelled the man. "We use these branches for our fires," Kalavati said. "We need them to cook our food and warm our homes." Another man waved a piece of paper. "We've got orders." "Already you've cut more than we cut in a year," Kalavati said. "Animals live among these trees. Where can they go?" Another man with an axe brushed past Kalavati. He walked by Ani's basket and nuts close to the tree that Ani sat beneath every day. Ani ran towards him. "Come back," her mother called. Ani threw her arms around the tree. She pressed herself against it. The man and his axe were at her back. How easily that axe had pierced the bark. "Ani!" her mother screamed. Ani heard her fear, but she pressed herself closer to the tree, close so that nothing came between them. The bark scraped her cheek. She didn't look until the sounds of the saws and swinging axe stopped. The wind wound around the trees so that the leaves softly wooed and hummed. And then she saw that all around her, women and children were hugging trees. The red tikkas on the women's foreheads made bright spots in the forest. The men had put down their axes and were whispering. Then one of the men said, "Please go home." "This is our home," said Kalavati. "We will give you 1,000 rupees just to leave," he replied. Ani thought about what 1,000 rupees might buy. A goat, so that they wouldn't have to carry kindling on their backs. It could buy new scythes for cutting rice and enough tea and sugar to last everyone for years. "No," Kalavati said, "we don't need 1,000 rupees. We need the trees." Once again, Ani and the women clasped their arms around the trees. Ani didn't move until she heard the rumble of the trucks, first loud, then fainter. Rustling leaves and rattling branches again filled the forest with their music. Ani dropped her arms from the tree. Namaste. Peace was what they wished for everyone who came and left. "What did you think you were doing?" Ani's mother asked. "I was so afraid." "I was afraid too," Ani said. Kalavati started dancing. Another woman bounced her baby. Overhead, birds flew from tree to tree. Someone began to chant. Ani looked up to the great range of mountains and whispered a prayer to the goddess mother of the world. The trees were safe now. Everyone was safe. The end. Ani and the Tree Huggers has been brought to you by Cultural Cafe. Cultural Cafe is an initiative that strives to narrate the stories of our nation's diversity. It hopes to build bridges to keep kindness, common ground, inclusion, and empathy alive through storytelling. Please support Cultural Cafe by liking, subscribing, or commenting. Thank you.